Hi guys, it's me ChazzaHD and welcome tonight to a race review, a full race review of the 2019 Bahrain Grand Prix, which of course happened yesterday, and it was one of the most exciting races we have seen for a while, and definitely in the turbo hybrid era. And hopefully you guys also did enjoy the Grand Prix as much as I did. If you want to hear my live reaction to that, then the race watch along from yesterday where I commentated on the race live, you can go and watch that. It's in the description down below. The race starts around the hour mark during that stream. But yes, such an exciting race. And we do have plenty to go through in tonight's stream. First, we're going to look at the results in just a moment. Then we'll go team by team and talk about how they did in detail with some quotes along the way. Then I will get into what is probably going to be a controversial part of this stream. The incident analysis. From some incidents at the Bahrain Grand Prix, there was so much going on. I could have had even more to analyse from the race, but I picked out 4 incidents. The Vettel-Hamilton incident, where Vettel spun. The Verstappen-Sainz incident, where Sainz got his front right puncture. And also the Stroll-Grosjean contact and the Giovinazzi-Kvyat contact. I could have even looked at the Leclerc-Vettel overtake or the Bottas-Verstappen overtake, but there was so much yesterday. Those are the 4 things I have picked out. And then after that, I'll look at the championship tables. Then we'll go to a Q&A for about 20 minutes, and then that will be the end of the stream. So hopefully you guys will enjoy. And also, no matter where you are in the world, hopefully you're doing well on what is, for me, a Monday evening. But if by some chance you did miss yesterday's enthralling Bahrain Grand Prix in the Sakhir Desert, let me now take you through the results and actually what did happen in Bahrain. So winning the race was Lewis Hamilton from Valtteri Bottas in second, a Mercedes 1-2. Charles Leclerc very unlucky in P3, we'll get onto that in just a moment. Max Verstappen finished in P4 with Vettel very disappointing in P5, then Norris P6, Raikkonen P7, Gasly very disappointing for his entire weekend finishing in P8, and then Alexander Albon in P9 and Sergio Perez in P10. And then outside the points was Giovinazzi, Kvyat, Magnussen, Stroll, Rosso and Kubica, and the people who did not finish the Bahrain Grand Prix were the 2 Renaults of Hülkenberg and Ricciardo, Carlos Sainz, and also Romain Grosjean. So those are the results of the Bahrain Grand Prix. Now let's go team by team and talk about how they all did and how their race just went from lap 1 until lap 57. And of course, we will start with the race winners and the world champions, of course, Mercedes, and Lewis Hamilton took another victory in Formula 1. This one was definitely a lucky one because he did not have the speed and was not quick enough to win that Grand Prix. It was going to be, without his engine issue we'll get onto in a moment, it was going to be Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari, but Lewis Hamilton, again, as he does at times, makes his own luck and capitalizes by being in the position to capitalize from Charles Leclerc's misfortune, gets into the lead and wins the Bahrain Grand Prix. But it wasn't an easy race for Lewis Hamilton. He wasn't just sat there cruising along for the entire race. For example, on the first lap, he lost position to his teammate Bottas. But then once Bottas was passed by Leclerc at the start of lap 2, he then got past Bottas. And then, after Leclerc passed Sebastian Vettel brilliantly for the lead, Hamilton then engaged himself in a race-long battle with Sebastian Vettel. First off, he undercut past Vettel and got past him by going onto another set of the soft tyres. Then Vettel very well passed him around the outside into turn 4. And Lewis Hamilton at that point wasn't looking that good for, say, a top 2 finish in the Bahrain Grand Prix. But then, again, went for the undercut on the medium tyres. Vettel pitted to cover him off, got out ahead. But then, of course, Lewis Hamilton brilliantly passed him. Vettel spun, and then Hamilton was up to second, and then he capitalised on Charles Leclerc's misfortune and won the Grand Prix. It was a good drive by Lewis, you cannot doubt that, a very good drive, but it was not a drive that was deserving of race victory, but still a very good drive, and another win that is added to his long list of victories. And as you can see here, Lewis Hamilton has now collected his third ever victory in Bahrain. The two previous victories in Bahrain for him were 2014 and 2015, and this is Mercedes' first win in Bahrain since 2016, where Nico Rosberg won from Kimi Raikkonen that day with Lewis Hamilton in P3. So great day for Mercedes, and this is what Lewis Hamilton had to say at the end of the race. He said, "It was very tricky out there today and I had to give it everything I had. We were lucky, very lucky to get this one too. Ferrari outperformed us all this weekend." Absolutely, that is bang on by Lewis right there. Ultimately, you want to have a real fight and want to pass someone because you are quicker, so it feels a bit weird and you cannot believe or can't quite believe your luck in these scenarios. Lewis is not dumb. He knows he was lucky, and anyone out there could tell you he was lucky to win that race. He still drove well, but he was lucky to win in Bahrain. But in regards to the championship, he won't care because he has now had another race win, and Mercedes are still unbeaten in 2019. But now let's go on to Valtteri Bottas, who had a bit of a weird race. It was up and down at times, to be honest. He had a great start, went from P4 to P2, then cracked under pressure slightly at turn 1 on the second lap when Leclerc showed a wheel down the inside. Bottas went wide, as I think he thought Leclerc was going to maybe make contact. Leclerc then got past Bottas, and then Hamilton got past Bottas into turn 4. And then Valtteri was basically in a race-long battle with Max Verstappen from there on in. Verstappen undercut past Bottas after the first round of pit stops, but then Valtteri pulled a great move on Max Verstappen around the outside at turn 4, one of the best overtakes that Valtteri has done in quite a while, and then was hanging on for what was going to be a P4. But then after Vettel had his spin and had his front wing failure because of a tyre vibration, he was promoted to third and then passed Leclerc for second, as Leclerc had, of course, his issues. So not the greatest race for Bottas, nowhere near as good as he was in Australia, of course. And I think with the pace of his car, even though it has come out, he had a plastic bag stuck to his front wing that did affect his grip and his speed in the Bahrain Grand Prix. I think this weekend Valtteri could have been maybe a bit better because, you know, qualifying, for example, that was the first time that he was out-qualified by a teammate at this track. So I think he will be a bit disappointed he couldn't show the speed when it really mattered. And yeah, I think was missing at times probably 1 to 2 tenths of a second that if he did have, maybe he could have been competitive with his teammate, but of course he was not. And this is what Bottas had to say at the end of the Bahrain Grand Prix after completing a 1-2 for his team. He said, this was not an easy race. The car was very difficult to drive and the conditions were very tricky with the gusty winds today. It was tricky with the wind, and that's why I think there was so much chaos in that Grand Prix, which made the car very unpredictable. It was actually relatively a lonely race for me at points. I didn't see anybody. After he passed Verstappen, after the first round of pit stops, yeah, it was a lonely race because he was about half a minute, I think, behind Hamilton for the last 20 laps or so, and just did not have the speed to be up there competing for the victory. And finished in second because of Leclerc's issue. Definitely deserved a podium, I think, Valtteri. I don't think his drive was bad, but just wasn't maybe as good as he was hoping, I think, going into this race. But for the team, a perfect result, considering this was not a track they were expecting to win at, never mind get a 1-2 finish, and now go to Shanghai, where they will be better, I think, in Shanghai than they were in Bahrain. I still don't think they'll have the best car in Shanghai, but they will be, I think they'll be better. I think that track has corners or sectors of that track that will suit that car better than Bahrain. And of course, Lewis Hamilton is not that good at this track. Shanghai is one of Lewis's best. So I'm expecting this team to be a bit more competitive in Shanghai, but still, of course, very close with the team I'm about to move on to, Ferrari, who were looking so good for a 1-2 finish in the Grand Prix, but then it all fell apart. Let's start with Charles Leclerc, who was, for me, the driver of the day on race day. So he did not have a good start, lost position to his teammate and Valtteri Bottas, and made slight contact with Lewis Hamilton, but it was nothing that serious. Then nicely scared Bottas out the way at the end of the start of lap 2 into turn 1. Then went marching after his teammate, and as it turns out, he defied team orders, because the whole lap before, where he was following Vettel very closely, the team told him to wait there for about 2 laps. And Charles defied those orders and went steaming around the outside of Vettel into turn 1 and defended very well into turn 4. Now you may say, should Charles have, agreed or, understood his team orders from the team? We don't know what the team would have said. The team might have said, right, Charles, yeah, go for the move, if he had waited those 2 laps. So you can't say he necessarily defied the order to stay behind. He did defy the order to stay behind for the amount of time that they wanted him to, but they may have said that he should go for the move on Vettel. So we can't say that he was totally in the wrong for that. And I think, as it turns out, it was the best thing he could have done, because he was way faster than Vettel. And I think, to be honest, they should have gave the team order to Vettel to maybe let Leclerc through, because Charles was so much quicker than Vettel during not only the race but the entire weekend. So what Charles did for me was absolutely fine and pulled a great move on Vettel, and from then on in, until his engine issues started to occur with about 10 to 12 laps to go, was dominating the race. No one could get near him. He had, at most, over Lewis Hamilton, after Hamilton passed his Ferrari teammate Sebastian, Vettel had about a 10.5 second lead over Lewis Hamilton. And then, of course, he had those such cruel engine issues happen to him. It turns out it was an engine cylinder. It was not an MGUK issue. It was one of the cylinders that caused his issue. It was similar, basically, to the spark plug issue that Vettel had at Suzuka in 2017. If any of you in the comments or the live chat remember that, you'll remember Vettel had a spark plug issue on the grid and then started the race and had no speed. Charles basically had the same kind of issue, and of course was never going to win the race, because there was not enough time left, or actually there was too much time left for him to maintain first. If that issue came up, say 3 laps from the end or 2 laps from the end, he would have been absolutely fine, because he had the gap to Lewis Hamilton. But yeah, just so cruel for Charles. He was easily the best driver out there, and he really did crush the opposition this weekend. He got the best out of the Ferrari car. Vettel did also, I think, do well up until the Grand Prix, but Charles this weekend got the best out of the car and was going to easily win that Grand Prix and win his first race ever and become a new winner in Formula One, and also Ferrari's youngest race winner, I think, in their history. So So cruel, but that's Formula One. It happens. Look at Damon Hill at the 1997 Hungarian Grand Prix. In the arrows, leading the race by an absolute mile by such a surprise. I think leading by over half a minute with about 5 laps to go. And then he had some kind of hydraulic issue or throttle sensor issue, which basically meant he only had half throttle for the last 5 laps. And sadly for him, Jacques Villeneuve passed him with, I think, 2 or 3 laps to go, and he finished in second. So, you know, it happens. It won't happen all the time. He will definitely win a race this season, no doubt about it. I wouldn't be surprised if he wins the race in Shanghai in 2 weeks' time. I think he does have the speed, and so do Ferrari. And hopefully, he does bounce back straight away from this. And I think his attitude to what happened is the right attitude. And you'll see with this quote what I mean by that. So this is what he had to say after the race ended. It's part of motorsport. We know that. And that is the right attitude to have. It's a part of motorsport. These things do, of course, happen. He also says, sometimes it's not your day to win, and today wasn't ours. In the final part of the race, we had an issue with the power unit and I had to slow down. I'm disappointed, but there was a lot of positives to take home from this weekend. Absolutely the right attitude to have, and he should try and maintain that going into Shanghai, because if he can have a similar weekend in Shanghai with the Ferrari car and the pace it does have right now, especially in a straight line, where they were gaining half a second a lap on the straights compared to the Mercedes team, if they can do that again in Shanghai, then they should also be on the front row of the grid at that race, and Leclerc could win in Shanghai. So hopefully he doesn't get too down, because there's going to be plenty of opportunities for him to win in 2019. And I think the next one is right around the corner at the 1000th race in Formula One history. So hopefully he picks himself up and marches forward. But, of course, Sebastian Vettel did not have a good race. He did have a good start, got into the lead and was looking good in the first 2 or 3 laps. But then once Charles Leclerc got into second, he did not have the speed to keep up with Charles and was easily passed by Charles. We have to say that. Charles, you know, steaming around the outside at turn 1. And it did kind of embarrass Sebastian, that move, because Leclerc is in his second race for Ferrari and is only 21 years old. Vettel, you know, 4-time world champion, been at Ferrari since 2015, and he gets mugged off around the outside by his teammate. That was a bit embarrassing, to be honest, for Vettel. And then after that, he was in a race against Lewis Hamilton for P2. And after, you know, the, the second stint where Hamilton undercut him on the soft tyres, and then Vettel very well passed him around the outside, things were looking good for Vettel. It looked as though Sebastian was going to finish in P2 and it was going to be a comfortable 1-2 for Ferrari. Then Hamilton tried the undercut again on the mediums. Vettel covered it off. And then Hamilton, of course, passed him around the outside and Vettel spun. Then the tyre vibration from spinning caused his front wing to fall off. And he did actually drop back to, I think, P8 in the order. So really, really embarrassing there for Sebastian Vettel to drop back to that position. He did, of course, pass the 2 Renaults, Norris and Raikkonen, to get back up to P5. But you have to say, another poor race for Vettel. He's had so many as of late. And, you know, look at the end of 2018. How many similar-ish races he had to what he had yesterday in Bahrain. When it comes to his mistake, I will analyse it later on. I'm not going to get that deep into it right now. But, again, making the same errors. And I don't think the guy has honestly learnt from his errors, which you should do. When you make an error, you should try to learn from it, and it doesn't seem as though Sebastian actually does. But for Ferrari, even though it has been a terrible result considering what it should have been, a 1-2, they can at least take the positives away that they did have the best car by quite a bit. And they should have, with the car they should have the best car in Shanghai and should, I think, lock out the front row at that race. Whether they do, who knows? But they should. So they shouldn't get too down because they could respond and get the result they were supposed to in Bahrain in 2 weeks in China. So hopefully they don't get too down on themselves and drop and lose their confidence, because even though it has been a tough start for Ferrari in terms of the race results, the pace is there in the car. You can clearly see that. So as long as they keep that up and do everything they can to get the best possible result, that's all they can do. And if they have reliability issues, then obviously that's something that has to be sorted out back at the factory. But when it comes to the trackside team, as long as they do everything they can to get the best possible result, that is all that matters. And hopefully they can in Shanghai. And they do also have to respond at that track with definitely a race win, because already in the drivers and constructors, Mercedes are flying away from them. So they do have to respond in 2 weeks' time. Now though, let's go on to Red Bull, who didn't have that eventful of a race. Max Verstappen had an okay start. He did get pressurized early on by Carlos Sainz and of course made contact with Sainz. I'll get onto that later on when I analyze it in the incident analysis part of this review. Made contact. Then at the first pit stop, undercut past Bottas, but then got passed again. And then after that, even though I think he pitted very early for the second stop and had to pass, I think, Raikkonen, Norris, and the Renaults, he didn't really have that eventful of a race and was cruising home for what he thought was going to be a P5. Then Vettel did what he did, got up to P4, and would have got P3 if the safety car did not come out. So a shame he didn't get a podium, but I don't think Max did deserve a podium. Red Bull did not have the pace to get a podium, and Max wasn't exactly at his absolute best, I think, in Bahrain. So yeah, Red Bull not really at the races in Bahrain. Shanghai should be a better track for them because it requires a lot more from the aerodynamic or chassis side than Bahrain requires. Bahrain, you do need good grip, but you also do need a very powerful engine at the Sakhir International Circuit. So Shanghai should be better, but hopefully they can at least be a bit closer to the top two in the Grand Prix, because I don't think they were really close enough, to be honest. But of course, we have to talk about Pierre Gasly. Started 13th. Made some moves, was on a very aggressive pit strategy. He pitted for the soft tyres at his first pit stop and then went on to the medium tyres. But to be honest, I don't think his race was actually that good. He would not have scored points if it was not for Carlos Sainz's incident with his teammate, Max Verstappen. And also, if the two Renaults had not had their issues, Gasly would not have finished in the points. So Gasly, I thought in the race, honestly, was still terrible. And it's clear he had no speed or confidence in that Red Bull. And he has to step it up for the next race in Shanghai, because if he does not, then, he will be looked at to be dropped by Helmut Marko. So he has to, in Shanghai, put it on the third row of the grid, realistically. And then if everyone else, the Ferrari, the Mercedes, and Verstappen ahead of him, if they finish the race in Shanghai, he has to finish in 6th. He has to be in the top 6 of qualifying and the race in Shanghai. That's the only way he can really start to redeem himself. If he does the same thing in China, then he honestly could be dropped by the time we get to the European season. I'm not saying that he should or that he definitely will, But we've seen it before with Red Bull. They're not scared to make a move. If you know what I mean, when it comes to their driver lineups, if they have to. So Shanghai is a crucial weekend for Pierre Gasly's career. He has to respond and has to be a lot closer to his teammate and get a lot more out of that car, in my opinion. It's been a very poor weekend, and Pierre absolutely has to step it up for Red Bull. But before I go on to the midfield, guys, let me know right now in the live chat and also the comment section, what did you think of Mercedes, Ferrari and Red Bull's races in Bahrain? Did you think Hamilton was lucky to win? What did you think of Ferrari's race? And were you surprised by the lack of pace that Red Bull had with Max Verstappen? Because I was. Let me know in the live chat or the comment section, and I'll try to read out in the live chat some of your comments for the next 5 minutes or so. But I just want to say, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this, as I will be doing the content I did at the Bahrain Grand Prix race weekend for the entirety of 2019 and all the races, of course. So bottom right of the screen, you can click subscribe right there, or click on my channel name, go to my channel page and subscribe and hit the notifications bell for more content like this. So let me see what you guys have to say. And Ultraman has just said, congratulations for Chazo with 3,000 subs. If that is true, thank you guys so much. I know we were very close to 3,000 subs, but I wasn't sure if we were going to get it in this stream. So if I have, then, you know, thank you so much. The support is fantastic that you guys give me, and without your support I wouldn't be able to make these videos and make the content that I do. Your support drives me to make this content, so thank you guys so much, and hopefully we can now march towards the next target, which is 4,000 subs at the end of April. That's the next target. So yeah, hopefully 4,000 this time next month. So thank you guys for that. But let me now read out some comments from you guys about what happened for the top teams in this Grand Prix, because we have a lot to talk about in the midfield. Daniel Crawford says Vettel still has a mental issue. It's like no one is allowed to overtake him, same as Max. This is the thing with Max though, is I think Max is a bit stronger in that area, but Vettel, as I'll get onto later, it's like when he gets overtook, it's like his pride has been massively damaged and he must avenge it immediately, or else that, you know, everything has gone wrong for him. He lacks patience. He lacks, you know, he does lack a lot of mental strength, but definitely does lack patience. For someone who you would think would be patient, considering he's a 4-time world champion and he's been in Formula 1 for what, 12 years now? But there you go. I'll get a lot deeper into that later on, because I've got plenty to say about Vettel in that incident with Lewis Hamilton. Astro Stevo says Hamilton did outrace Vettel and the rest of the field, but Leclerc outraced him. Absolutely. Lost and Damned. Hamilton was definitely lucky, but he is consistent. He's always there when someone has a bad weekend, such as Bottas in Baku in 2018 and Vettel at Hockenheim. Again, I didn't actually think he was lucky at Hockenheim in 2018, but Baku 2018 he was definitely lucky. But again, if you are going to maximize the amount of points you can get and have the best season possible, sometimes you've got to be there to capitalize on other issues that people have. Even if you're not having a great race, you've still got to, you know, stick around, stick in there, and just wait for things to happen. Because sometimes you can be, you know, you can qualify in third, be racing in third, you can't see the two ahead because they're way too fast, but then they may take each other off or have their own reliability issues, and you win. So, you know, that's a great thing, of course, that Lewis does have, that he has the ability to not, push amazingly as hard as he used to and be a bit more patient, a bit more cautious, and wait for the opportunities to come to him. By the way, thank you to Vic T, Francisco, who else? Motorsport Tube, Astro Stevo. Thank you guys a lot for the praise. Thank you guys very, very much for that. But the final comment I'll read before I go to the midfield is from Xavier Charles, who says Ferrari isn't unreliable. They had a very strange problem. They keep the engine for the next race, but it's still in good shape. The issue they had is a very small one, but a big enough one to, make that result happen. So I don't think Ferrari is unreliable. I mean, they did have cooling issues in Australia, but that was because of the packaging that they got wrong on the car. That wasn't a Ferrari power unit issue. So I don't think their power unit is unreliable. It has gone wrong in one race. That doesn't mean you're unreliable. The Renault power unit, for example, is the unreliable power unit because it's failed in Australia, in the McLaren, and also, in Bahrain, failed on the two Renaults, and I think Carlos Sainz, but I'm not entirely sure. But there you go. But now we'll get into the midfield, and starting off with Renault, who were having a great race with their two drivers. Starting off with Daniel Ricciardo. So he had a decent start, was running at the back end of the top 10, then got up into P7, I believe, or P6, after some very good opening race pace from Daniel Ricciardo. Stayed out very long and was the only person, I think, to do a one-stop race in the Bahrain Grand Prix. And even though he was only going to finish in P10, I think it was a successful enough strategy from Ricciardo and Renault, because they were going to end up scoring points, because Albon behind Ricciardo was too far behind. Hülkenberg, though, was one of the best drivers yesterday. Started P17, was running P6 at the end of the race when he had his issue. But, pulling great moves on Perez, Magnussen, Raikkonen, going down the inside of Raikkonen at the first corner, midway through the Grand Prix, and was fully deserving of the position he was going to finish in, which was P6. But then they both had, I believe, electronic issues for both cars at the exact same time that put both cars out the race and cost them 9 crucial points in the constructors. They were actually going to move up into P4, I believe, in the constructors, but now they're down in P7. That just shows you how quickly things will change in Formula 1, and it is such a shame for the drivers, but for the team, I'm afraid they've got to do better. The reliability of that power unit is not good enough. The power is better, you can see that, but the reliability is poor. Sainz retired in Australia and Bahrain, I think, with power unit issues, or something to do with that. I don't know what the exact cause was in Bahrain, but Australia, it was definitely an issue with the Renault power unit. And then they had both Renault works cars retire at the same time in Bahrain. It may be a bit more powerful, but it needs to be more reliable. And this is what Cyril Beatball, the team principal of Renault, had to say after that absolute disaster. He said, after a very intense winter, it's been a very bad start to our racing season. Our race today came to a sudden stop, so close to the finish. We must react and shift our focus onto reliability. Absolutely, but will they actually achieve that? Renault have had reliability issues since the V6 turbo era began, and they're never ever, by the seems of it, going to have a reliable V6 1.6 litre turbo hybrid power unit. So, that's just the way it is for Renault. I think it's a bit more powerful than it was last year, But as he said, Renault have had a bad start to this season because even though the power unit looks better in terms of its power output, I think the chassis and the aerodynamics of the Renault car is a bit behind where it should be, because in qualifying, for example, McLaren out-qualified Renault by over half a second. That was Carlos Sainz back to Daniel Ricciardo. P7 to P11. That's not good enough. You cannot, if you're a works team, you cannot be beaten by a team that is using your power units but is not the works team, you know, or a customer team. You cannot be beaten by your own customers. That is just unacceptable. I know McLaren are McLaren, and they did that to Mercedes as well in 2010, 2011, 2012. They were beating the works team, but that's not an excuse. Renault is a massive company, tons of money, no excuses at all. And I think, though, Shanghai will show where the Renault car is struggling. I think it's to do with the aero or the chassis, but Shanghai will show whether it is that, because you have that long back straight, which will show how good the Renault is at the moment. But you have the first two sectors, which will show if the Renault aerodynamically is good enough. So after Shanghai, I think we'll know what the issues are for Renault. But yeah, poor race in terms of result. P11 and P17 in qualifying, and a double DNF right at the end of the Grand Prix with both cars. Not good enough at all. But now, let's move on to McLaren, who had a great race. Lando Norris finishing in P6 in his first points finish in Formula 1. And he was, for me, the second best driver on race day in Bahrain, pulling some great moves on Raikkonen and Ricciardo, I think, as well. But there was one overtake that he pulled on Pierre Gasly at turn 4. If you want to see it, go on to Twitter and search Norris versus Gasly, or Norris Gasly Bahrain Grand Prix, and you will see the overtake. Actually, go to my Twitter, because I actually, I think I quote tweeted it. Go to my Twitter and you'll see it. I posted it earlier. Absolutely amazing overtake. Right round the outside of Gasly, and he was nowhere near Gasly in the braking zone. He was miles behind in the braking zone, then just sailed round the outside of Gasly and caught him unawares. A great move. And I think that Lando Norris is quickly becoming a little star in Formula 1, but is becoming one of the best overtakers in Formula 1. He passed Giovinazzi very well in Melbourne, pulled great moves on Gasly, Raikkonen, Ricciardo as well. I thought he was very, very good in Bahrain, and undoubtedly one of the stars in the desert under the lights. For Carlos Sainz, though, a bit of a shame, to be honest, because, you know, his pace was so good, and I think he did have a quicker pace than Lando Norris. He was looking so good, running P6, and was having a go at Max Verstappen, and looked as though he was genuinely faster than Max Verstappen, honestly. But then, of course, Verstappen made contact with him, and he had a front right puncture, and that was the end of his Grand Prix. I don't know what the issue was for his retirement, but such a shame, because he would have been right there with Norris, and I think McLaren would have finished in P6 and P7 had it not been for that. Maybe if Verstappen was so slow, maybe Carlos could have finished in P4, you never know. We don't know how quick Carlos really could have been in the Grand Prix, but realistically, I don't think he would have been up there with Verstappen and Sebastian Vettel, to be honest, in the race results. But P6 and P7 would have put them P4 in the Constructors. So it shows that McLaren, at the moment, we'll have to see confirmation in Shanghai, but at the moment, they're looking very, very strong, and hopefully they keep it up, because we want to see McLaren getting back to where they deserve, of course, to be. Next up is Alfa Romeo. Kimi Raikkonen, I'm going to say this now, has really been underrated for his performance in Bahrain in the race yesterday, because started P8, was involved in a lot of chaos during the race, was constantly side by side in the first 10 laps with Perez, Hülkenberg, Ricciardo, Magnussen, Norris, Sainz. The list goes on. Then eventually got into a rhythm and started to set a very good pace for himself in the Alfa Romeo. And then after putting on the soft compound for the final stint of the Grand Prix, was so quick, and he could have, and I think he would have, passed Norris for P6 if there was no safety car at the end of the Grand Prix. And I think Kimi should be talked about more for his race result, because I think that result for Alfa is a very, very good one, capitalising on Haas's issues, Renault's issues, and now Alfa are P4 in the Constructors. And I think Kimi's performance should be talked about more. It was very, very good, and also kept his cool when others, of course, did not. But I want to also shout out Antonio Giovinazzi, because his race was actually quite a good one. He only just missed out on points in P11. Maybe if he was a touch quicker at times, he could have got a point off of Sergio Perez after the two Renaults retired from the race. But pretty good race. Hopefully he can build on that for Shanghai. But yeah, pretty good race for Giovinazzi. Of course, he did make contact with Danny Kvyat. I will analyse that later on, but yeah, I'm going to say that's the first real positive session that Giovinazzi, I think, has had, and hopefully he can build on that, because Alfa need him to also be right up there, because if he was in Bahrain and Australia, Alfa might be running away with P4 in the Constructors at the moment, so hopefully he can step it up even more and be there with Kimi. But yeah, Alfa looking good, and I think Alfa are not getting talked about enough. I don't think they're getting talked about enough. I think they're having a very good season so far, and if they can score points in Shanghai at a track where I don't think they're going to be that good, then I think they're looking incredibly strong here in 2019. But now let's move on to a team that was definitely not incredibly strong in the Grand Prix. First off, Romain Grosjean took out by Stroll at the first couple corners, and his race after that was basically over. So shame for him, but that's sometimes just the way it goes. But Kevin Magnussen was just so slow in the Grand Prix. Qualified 6th, was only 0.005 of a second slower than Max Verstappen in qualifying, but had no speed in the Haas, got passed by Norris, Sainz, Ricciardo, Raikkonen, the Toro Rossos. Even Giovinazzi was faster than Magnussen and beat Magnussen in the Grand Prix. By the way, Kvyat beat Magnussen in the Grand Prix, and Kvyat had a 5-second penalty. That's how slow Kevin Magnussen was. He said he couldn't explain why after the Grand Prix, but I think it comes to tyres. The tyres were very delicate this weekend in Bahrain, and we have seen in the past couple years that Haas are probably the worst team in the midfield for looking after their tyres. We saw that at times in 2018. Go back to Singapore in 2018, where Grosjean had a train behind him at that race. I think Russia as well, 2018, where Haas were really off the pace compared to where they really could or should have been. But I think it was a tyre wear issue. I think that's why, because Magnussen never went off track. Credit to him for not going off track, considering how many times he was side by side with people, but he never went off track, never made a mistake. But the pace of the car was just not there. And I think it comes down to tyres. Honestly, I think that car had really bad tyre wear. And I think that's why they ended up with only 13th in the race with K-Mag and a DNF for Grosjean, which of course, he couldn't really get into the race and show what he had. But K-Mag, I think honestly with the issues he had, that's the best he could have done. The Haas, I think, just had really bad tyre wear. But there you go, for Haas, not good. And they really now, for the Chinese Grand Prix, they're going to have to respond big time. They've got to get in there for the race and finish them, say, P7 or P8 if they're going to respond and show the speed that we know they do have. But also Shanghai is also quite tough on tyres, especially when the sun comes out. So they might struggle again at that track, but we'll have to see. Next up is Toro Rosso, and a big congratulations to Alexander Albon, the most underrated driver right now, I think, in Formula 1, for getting his first points finish, finishing P9. He was lucky to finish in the points, we can't doubt that. Without the two Renaults retiring, he would not have finished in P9, but like Lewis Hamilton, you've got to be there when these things happen to capitalise, and he absolutely was. Finishing 9th. He outclassed his teammate Danny Kvyat this weekend, and for me, was deserving of a strong finish, not a points finish, but of a strong finish. And it would have been P11 if the two Renaults had not suffered their unlucky moment at the end. But congratulations to Albon, and you guys need to start really looking at this guy as a potentially good driver. He's a class racing driver. Very intelligent, very skilled. Charles Leclerc, for example, rates the guy very highly. So does Norris, Russell, drivers like that. He's a very highly rated among his peers. And he should be highly rated because he is very, very good. Danny Kvyat, finishing P12. He had a very scruffy weekend. Not consistent weekend, to be honest. And just didn't get the pace out of the car that really he should have, honestly. I think he should have been there with Albon, and he was at times, but Albon just was quicker than Kvyat in the Bahrain Grand Prix. But yeah, Albon, good result. Kvyat, not so much, but it wasn't bad considering how troubled his weekend has been. But Toro Rosso, again, finishing in the points. But I will say, I think their Bahrain Grand Prix result was a bit disappointing considering where they've ended up last year. I know the aerodynamics are different for 2019 compared to 2018, but they could have done better, I think, with the pace of the car this weekend, to be honest. We'll now move on to Racing Point. Perez also got lucky to score a point, but again, you've got to be there to capitalise. In P10, we didn't really get to see Perez's race. He was kind of always in the battle, but never really at the forefront of the battle. He did make a very good start to the race, but yeah, was never really quick enough to actually finish in the points. And Lance Stroll capped off a terrible weekend with a collision with Romain Grosjean and ended up finishing in P14. So not good for me pace-wise from Racing Point, and I think improvements need to come. Luckily for them, sorry, there's something in my throat then. Luckily for them, Baku is in 2 races' time. That is normally one of, if not their best track on the calendar. So a good result is coming for this team, but still, upgrades, development really does need to happen for this team because they do seem to be a bit off the boil, to be honest, at the moment in Formula 1. And of course, last of all is Williams, who finished in P15 and P16. They did actually race each other. I think Kubica repassed Russell a couple times, but Russell finishing ahead because he is the quicker and I think better driver, to be honest. But at least for Williams, it was a better result than Australia. I don't think they were actually as far off the pace in Bahrain than they were in Australia, and had a better race result, even though that was because there were more retirements in the Bahrain Grand Prix than there was in Australia. But there you go, that is the review of the teams. And for the next 5 minutes, guys, right now in the live chat and the comment section, let me know what you thought of the midfield team's performances from Renault all the way down to Racing Point. Not necessarily Williams because they're not a midfield team, of course. Let me know in the live chat and the comment section, and I'll try to read out as many comments as I can for the next 5 minutes or so, and then we will get into probably the most controversial part of this video, the analysis of the incident. So let me now read what you guys have to say in regards to the midfield. And then we will go on to the next part of this stream. Simon Cragland says Haas had no race pace whatsoever. It reminds me a bit of Russia last year. Haas was the second slowest team yesterday. That's what was even shocking, is they were the slowest midfield team. They were even slower than Racing Point. I think if Stroll didn't have his collision with Grosjean, I think Stroll would have beat Magnussen in that Grand Prix. So yeah, very, very poor pace from the Haases, you absolutely have to say. Astro Stevo says the midfield is just so close, it's like they are all equal so far. Tracks and luck and tiny fractions of a second and small pit stop strategies. So much difference, or I think he's trying to say such little difference, so close. The midfield is how the whole field should be, honestly, in Formula 1. Of course, there are differences between the cars, but they are pretty much equal, and they were all racing each other down from P15, I think, on the grid, all the way up to P6. That's how it should be, from P1 all the way down to P20, to be honest. But obviously, that's not going to happen really ever. But what I like about the midfield is it takes no prisoners. Everyone in there is in an equal enough car. They're all kind of equal enough in terms of talent level and skill. And that's why we get such a great midfield battle, because they're all kind of equal with drivers and cars. And if you don't perform in the midfield, you know it isn't because of an alternate issue. It's because you just, as a driver, maybe weren't quick enough, or your car was maybe just slightly too slow. I really do like the midfield this year, because it takes no prisoners whatsoever, and that is that is how it should be, honestly. Francisco says Kimi has been awesome so far, but classic Kimi quietly getting the results. Kimi never spectacularly gets results. He does it, in a very smooth, methodical way. Hold on, I'm just trying to find a comment. Airbus fan says, do you think Red Bull will keep third at least in the constructors? Your dad apparently works at the Red Bull factory, and he said there are potential upgrades for Monaco, Spain, Baku, Austria. Please answer. From what I heard from Red Bull, I think they brought an upgrade that they were going to have for Shanghai. They brought it forward for the Australian Grand Prix. So they're going to bring a big upgrade to Spain, because all the teams do. And then they'll probably get a big engine upgrade for Canada, because all the engine manufacturers do. But after that, I can't really say. But yes, Spain and Canada, those will be where the upgrades then from the teams and the engine manufacturers start to play their hand in the 2019 season. Right, let me find one more comment, and then I will move on to the incident analysis here. Right, let me just find it a moment. Sebastian, who do you think will be on pole at China? He asks. Ferrari surely had to be favourites, as Sector 1 and Sector 3 have some straights, and Toto Wolff said Ferrari are half a second ahead on the straights. Ferrari should be the favourites for Shanghai. I think Mercedes is still going to be very close, especially in the race. I think Ferrari in qualifying will be very strong in Shanghai, but in the race it's going to be another head-to-head between those two. But yeah, in qualifying, yeah, Ferrari I think they're probably going to end up getting pole, if not the front row. But the race is going to be a tough fight, I think, between the top three teams, Ferrari, Mercedes, and, of course, Red Bull. But now, guys, I'm going to start analysing the key incidents from the 2019 Bahrain Grand Prix. And of course, from the 2019 Bahrain Grand Prix, there was plenty to talk about, and there was plenty of stuff that did occur in what was one of the most exciting races to happen in a very long time. Now, we're going to start off with the most controversial and the most key, I think, incident in the Grand Prix. And that was Lewis Hamilton and his overtake on Sebastian Vettel, and then Sebastian Vettel's spin. So, first off, at turn 1, Hamilton was very close behind, dummy to the inside, and Sebastian fell for it and cracked under pressure, let's be honest. Hamilton then got a great run on him through turn 2 and turn 3, on the run to turn 4 with DRS, and then pulled to the outside like you can see here. And I think Lewis knew that if he could, like he did, go around the outside, he would have Sebastian, really mentally especially, beaten up very good. So here, Hamilton is going to have the momentum going around the outside. Vettel is obviously going to try his hardest to keep Lewis at bay, but it is going to be very hard to keep Lewis at bay. You can see here, before the apex of turn 4, Hamilton already pulling ahead, because the outside line at turn 4, when going wheel to wheel, is the line to be on, because you then have the racing line on the exit and the momentum going into turn 5, turn 6, so on and so forth. So Hamilton here really does have the line, and even though it is going to be close between the two, Hamilton is definitely more likely to make the overtake than Vettel is to keep Lewis Hamilton behind. Then you can see here, this is the apex of turn 4. Hamilton clearly pulling ahead with the extra momentum and speed coming up to turn 4 compared to Vettel. And of course, Hamilton was on the racing line on the approach to turn 4, and Sebastian was on the dirty side of the track. And then Hamilton started to pull ahead. Now, the criticism here for Vettel mostly is the panic that he clearly showed in this incident. So you can clearly see here, Lewis Hamilton is basically ahead in this move. And now Vettel, what Vettel should be doing, because he has the extra straight line speed and the faster car, let's remember that Ferrari were 1-2 in the Grand Prix for so long and had the best car. What he should do is settle in behind and try and repass Hamilton later on, because there was, I think, 15 to 20 laps left in the Grand Prix. So he should have just accepted that Lewis passed him because of a better run around the outside, and then try and get him back, which he could have. And also Sebastian did have 1 lap fresher tyres compared to Hamilton, so it wasn't like Vettel was defenseless at all in this incident. But then, as you can see right here, Hamilton clearly ahead, and this is the moment where Sebastian loses it all. This is the moment right before, a millisecond before, he spins the car and goes round. And then, of course, spins the car. Now, for me, Sebastian, again, is guilty of what he was guilty of plenty of times in 2018 and plenty of times in his career. He cracked under pressure. He absolutely 100% bottled it. First, starting at turn 1, falling for Hamilton's dummy, which is a simple racing move that Hamilton did. It's such a simple thing to do and a simple tactic to do when you're racing someone, and he fell for it. Then got passed around the outside by Lewis Hamilton, and because Sebastian is not emotionally controlled and tends to panic in high pressured situations, he then did this and, of course, lost his front wing after a tyre vibration. And I have to say again, has caused his own downfall. And I'll say again, just like I did in the race watch along, I do not see how this guy is an all-time great driver. He makes this same mental error so many times. When a high-pressure situation comes up, he cracks under pressure, panics, and just bottles it. All-time great drivers such as Schumacher, Senna, Hamilton, Prost, Niki Lauda, those drivers would not commit the same mental error as many times as Sebastian has. And he has done it plenty of times, all the way back to 2010 and also 2011 in that season where he dominated. Sebastian does this time after time after time after time, and he's done it plenty of times since 2017. For example, Baku, Singapore, the slight crash at Mexico where he hit the back of Lewis Hamilton even though he wasn't massively at fault. And then, of course, Baku in 2018 where he went down the inside of Bottas and went wide. France where he hit Bottas. Hockenheim where he bottled the lead of the Grand Prix in a high pressure situation where the rain was starting to fall. Monza 2018. By the way, that incident at Monza was very similar to that. Hamilton had him round the outside, Vettel panicked, tried to get him back immediately instead of waiting to get him back, which is what he should have done and which most people would do that are mentally strong. He hit Hamilton and spun. He didn't hit Hamilton in this incident, but he still spun. And then you have Suzuka going up the inside of Max Verstappen when he didn't need to, and then spinning with Ricciardo. And now Bahrain 2019, he has done it yet again. Now, if this is the only error he makes in 2019, then maybe he can have a successful season. But it has become clear to me that Sebastian Vettel has not learnt from his mistakes. And for me, mentally, is too weak to compete at the very top level of Formula One right now. Lewis Hamilton mentally, for example, has him absolutely done in and beaten to a pulp. And by the way, the Hamilton versus Vettel debate is clearly over. It's no real debate as to who is the better driver, and especially when it comes to the mentality, Vettel is very, very weak. And if Sebastian is going to improve, it's clear what he has to do. See a therapist or a psychologist and improve upon this with some different methods or something like that. I'm not the biggest fan of sports psychologists or people like that, but if it helps and it can stop these errors happening, then do it and admit you have an issue when it comes to panicking in these moments and panicking in high pressure situations. Because if he continues like this and tries to pretend there is no issue, this will happen again and again and again and again and again and again and again until Ferrari decide, you know what, Seb, you've had plenty of time, you haven't done the job for us, Charles our number one, it's time that you leave the team. And if he continues to do this, that is exactly what will happen. So there you go. Hopefully he can improve upon this. But guys, I don't see him improving upon this. This is Sebastian Vettel, the same driver that makes the same mistake time after time again. Why would he now start to learn right now when he could have done so 2 or 3 years ago when he was a bit younger, or even 8 or 9 years ago when he was a lot younger? For me, this is just the way this guy is. When he gets in a wheel-to-wheel combat, he panics, makes simple mistakes, and because of that, and because of the circumstances of certain things that have happened in his career, for me, he is not an all-time great. And I don't think anyone out there can present me a strong enough case for this guy being an all-time great. I don't think anyone out there can present that to me, other than he's a 4-time world champion and then throw out all his stats, when what you should do is look at the circumstances behind that. And the circumstances show that he is not as good as his stats show. It's clear to see that. So for me, Sebastian is again committing the same errors. And for me, this is just the person he is. And for me, is a mentally fragile and weak driver. But now I'm going to move on to the next incident analysis. Now, if you watch the race watch along, you may have heard me say that Verstappen, I think, was at fault for this incident with Carlos Sainz. But after seeing a slow frame-by-frame replay, and also with the screenshots I have here, my opinion is now different. So you can see here, Carlos Sainz is ahead at the moment as he approached the braking zone for turn 4. And then Max Verstappen dives down the inside to try and hold on to P5 in the Bahrain Grand Prix. And it looks like it's going to be a very close battle into turn 4. And it got even closer than close into turn 4, as right there they made contact, left front to right front in that incident. And Sainz, of course, had his front right puncture. But now we're going to cut to Verstappen's on board. Now, when I watched it at full speed yesterday, I thought this was Verstappen's fault. But after watching it slowly and going, through it frame by frame, for me, this is not Verstappen's fault. This is, for me, a racing incident. And I'm going to show why. So here you can see Sainz is pulling ahead into turn 4. Then, because he has more momentum, he's on the racing line, and as DRS pulls ahead even more. Now, at this point where Max dives down the inside, he does have room to go down the inside, and there is room for him to make that move. You can clearly see that right there on that onboard. There is room to make the move work, and there is enough space, I think, for 2 cars to get into that corner from that screenshot right there. But the reason the contact happens is because Carlos, I think, thinks the move is over and that he can now turn in to turn 4 ahead of Max Verstappen. But of course, with the way Verstappen is, he is not going to just let you go through without a fight. And of course, as we all know, he then threw it down the inside, and that is the point of contact. So for me, the reason it's a racing incident is because both drivers caused the accident to happen. First, because Sainz turned in more than he should have. He should have gave a bit more space on the inside, but then because Sainz turned in, the reason the contact happened was because Verstappen clumped over the inside curb and went right into the side of Carlos Sainz. And then, as you can see there on the onboard, Sainz had a front right puncture. So for me, that is not Verstappen's fault. They were both at fault for causing that collision. And for me, that is only a racing incident. So there you go. And now we'll move on to the final 2 incidents, which is, first off, we'll go with the Stroll-Grosjean one. So this is the approach to turn 2 at the very start of the Grand Prix. You can see there Grosjean on the right of Stroll, and then you've got Pierre Gasly in the Red Bull slightly to the left of Stroll's car. Now Grosjean is on the outside for turn 2 and Stroll is on the inside. Now the reason this is Lance Stroll's fault is because Grosjean here on the right is giving Stroll room. He knows Stroll is there and is prepared and is going to run wide or wider deliberately into turn 2 than you would so that he can get through the corner, and so can Lance Stroll. And you can see there Stroll is trying to turn into turn 2, but the reason the collision happened, as I'll move on to this picture, that's the point of contact. The reason it happened is because Lance carried too much speed into the corner. And you can see that if I go back here, because look, he's turning into turn 2, but the car just won't go in as much as he wants it to, and he goes into the side of Romain Grosjean. And then you can see there Grosjean heading more so towards off the track than being on the track. And for me, Stroll was at fault for that crash, because Grosjean gave him space to get through the corner with him. Grosjean did not turn in. Stroll just carried too much speed in and understeered into Romain Grosjean, and the damage he got was deserving, because he caused his own downfall, just like Sebastian Vettel. And the final analysis we'll go through is the Antonio Giovinazzi and Danny Kvyat collision. Now, my opinion is also different for this one. In the race watch along, I thought this was Giovinazzi's fault, but I think this is now a racing incident, just like the Verstappen and Sainz one. So here you can see Giovinazzi on the run down to turn 11 with DRS, gets a great run in the Ferrari-powered Alfa Romeo, and then dives down the inside at turn 11. Now, he has enough of his car alongside to make this move. This is not a wild move. This is not overly aggressive. This is a fair move by Antonio, and is absolutely in the right to make this move. But the reason the collision happens, and the reason it's a racing incident, is because they both, just like Verstappen and Sainz, caused this crash to happen. Because as you can see right here, because Giovinazzi has gone onto, with his left front tyre, onto the inside curb, that will now push him wider. Even if it's slight, it will push him wider than he wants to be into the corner. But Kvyat has not given Antonio enough room to get through the corner. If Kvyat went a bit wider, they would have gone through the corner just about okay. But Kvyat was intent on using the racing line, and Giovinazzi, even though he was fair in his diving down the inside, because he clipped that curb, it then created this contact. So for me, just a racing incident. I don't think anyone is at fault for this crash. They're both at fault, and that for me makes it just a racing incident. Another racing incident, of course, for Danny Kvyat, who has plenty in his career. But those are the incidents from the Bahrain Grand Prix of 2019. Don't forget to comment down below what you thought of my analysis of these incidents. But it was clear to see, for me, or in my opinion, that those drivers that were at fault or weren't at fault, that's the way it happened, in my opinion. And also, it's great to be able to analyse so much from what was a fantastic 2019 Bahrain Grand Prix. But there you go. That is the incident analysis. Now, I just want to say to you guys, before I go on to the next part of the review, that incident analysis will be uploaded tomorrow as a separate video, because I understand that some people can't always watch a 2-hour stream to see everything that I have to have or analyze. So I did just record that, and that will be posted tomorrow as a separate video, so people can watch that and give their thoughts on that. And that's why I said comment down below what you think of my opinion. So I will upload that tomorrow for anyone who does miss out on it, because I know, again, it is a bit hard to catch up on everything in a long stream. But we'll move on from that and go on to the drivers and constructors standings. So Valtteri Bottas still leads the Drivers' Championship by 1 point from Lewis Hamilton. Verstappen is still in third, 1 point ahead of Leclerc. Vettel is in fifth, already 22 points off the lead. He has to have a great Chinese Grand Prix, in my opinion. Kimi Raikkonen is then P6, then it's Norris P7, Magnussen P8, Hulkenberg P9, and Gasly in P10. Sorry about my throat there. And then the Constructors is Mercedes with a 39-point lead. That is a great lead for them to have. Ferrari second, Red Bull third, Alfa fourth, McLaren fifth, joint fifth with Haas, who are sixth, and then Renault seventh. Toro Rosso and Racing Point are level on points for 8th and 9th. And then Williams, of course, are 10th with no points at all. But guys, that is it basically for the race review. Now for the next 20 minutes or so, make sure to put in the best questions you can, and I'll try to answer as many as I can in the live chat. And also, if you do post any in the comments after this stream has finished, I'll try to answer some in there as well. But yeah, make sure to post them in the live chat right now, and I'll try my best to get to as many as I can. But before I do, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this, as I do the race reviews right after, the day after the races. So don't forget to subscribe. Bottom right of the screen, you can click subscribe right there, or click on my channel name and go to the channel page and subscribe and hit the notifications bell for that content. But now we'll get into this Q&A. Also, I just want to say, don't forget to join our Discord. The link below is in the description. We're really climbing in terms of membership in there. We've almost got 150 people. It'd be great to have you there. That's the best place for notifications for my videos and streams, by the way. So if you want notifications in the best way, you've got to join the Discord. It's in the link down below, I believe. And yep, it is third from bottom. I just want to talk about the Discord because you would have seen, anyone who's in there, you would have seen Nib post something about the Ferrari power unit. For the people that took it literally, I can't believe you did not see how it was an April Fool's joke. I can't believe how you did not see it. All I'll say is, go back and look at what the tweet said and look at the percentage number, and you'll see how it's an April Fool's. So the people who fell for it, joke's on you. But right, let's now get into this Q&A for the next 20 minutes or so. Just trying to find the first one, then we'll start from there. Sebastian asks, how long do you think Leclerc will be at Ferrari? I don't know, but I think it'll be to the mid-2020s at the least. I think Leclerc is someone who is going to be at Ferrari for a long time. Probably 5 years at the least, honestly. But yeah, I'd say to the mid-2020s. After that, I can't really say, because who knows who's going to come along and maybe be better than Leclerc. We don't know. We'll have to see. How many of the midfield drivers are better than Vettel? That's a Wish Wader. When you say midfield, do you mean drivers in midfield cars or midfield drivers? Let me know what you... Or can you clarify what you mean by that? Because if you're talking about, say, Daniel Ricciardo in a midfield car, then yeah, I'd say Ricciardo, I think, is probably a better driver, honestly. I wouldn't say Vettel is better than Raikkonen. After that, he says current midfield drivers. No, I don't think there's really any midfield drivers that are better than Vettel. No, I don't think there is any. This is the thing with Sebastian. He's still one of the best on the grid. You can't doubt that. For me, he is probably top 3 or 4 on the grid, and that's still a very good thing to be, but he's not, for me, as good, definitely, as Lewis Hamilton or Max Verstappen. Absolutely not. Right, let me find some more questions here. Ultraman says, do we have extended race for 1,000th Grand Prix celebration? I don't think so. Wishwader asks, if Alonso had always been in the same car as Vettel, how many championships would Alonso have by now? Alonso would probably have 5, I'd say. 4 or 5. But definitely more than 3, and more than obviously he has at the end of his career. Definitely. Francisco asks, do you think Murray Walker doing commentary for the 1,000th race is a possibility? No, because he is actually a lot older than people think. He's almost 100 years old, is Murray, and isn't in the best health. So yeah, there's no way that's going to happen. Even though if it did, it would be such a great thing to hear him and Martin Brundle do a commentary. Count Blah asks, do you think Mercedes have improved their tyre wear this season so far? Yes, I think they have, but I think that's because they have that wheel hub solution that they came up with at the summer break of 2018 that helped them in Monza, for example, in 2018. I think it's because of that. I don't think it's because of anything else. I think it's because of that new solution that they came up with. Sebastian asks, if Vettel gets replaced this season or next season, who will be the likeliest to replace him? For people, I just want to say this, it's not going to be Mick Schumacher. I've seen so many people saying, oh, Leclerc and Schumi for 2021. It's not going to happen. Not going to happen in a million years. If Mick comes into Formula 1, he will be going to Alfa Romeo before he goes to Ferrari. I can guarantee you that. And we don't even know if Mick is even going to be good enough to get into Formula 1. Because he wasn't that good in Bahrain. I'm not going to, jump on the guy because it was his first ever experience at Bahrain. And once we get to tracks that he knows, then he should be better. But people saying that need to stop because it's way too early to say that. I don't really know. You could, I think I said this a couple months ago, but you could see, say, Ricciardo replacing Vettel and Vettel going the other way to Renault. That's a possibility, but will Ferrari go for Ricciardo? I don't know. After that, we'll have to see. We'll have to see. I don't think, by the way, it'll be Antonio Giovinazzi. I don't think Giovinazzi will be good enough to get into the Ferrari. If he does, though, do well enough to be in the Ferrari, then it will be him, but I don't think he will. But the only person I can honestly think of is Lewis Hamilton. Not Lewis Hamilton. What am I on about? Is Daniel Ricciardo. You could say Max Verstappen, but we don't know how Honda with Red Bull are really going to do yet, so can't say. But Ricciardo is the only realistic person I could see replacing him. Right, let me read out some more. Do you believe that Bottas has reverted to his true form after this race? Asks Count Blah. No. He was still good in the race. I mean, his overtake on Verstappen was good. He had a great start, and his pace was affected by a plastic bag that was stuck to his front wing. So his pace in his race was affected. You cannot doubt that at all. So please bear that in mind before, we start criticizing the guy. But he reverted more so to what he normally is like, put it that way. Prussia, if McLaren becomes a good midfield team, do you think that Alonso might plan on a comeback? No, I don't think that'll be the case. If he races for McLaren in Formula 1 again, it'll be if McLaren have a consistent race winning or podium challenging car, he won't come back to race for P6 or P7 on the grid. There's no way he'll come back for that. Ben McCarthy asks, who's F1's most overrated and underrated driver current and of all time? Overrated? I'm still going to say Nico Hülkenberg. I still don't get why people think that Hülkenberg is this amazing driver when he's not. He's a midfield driver, that's all. I don't think he can ever race for a top team or be successful for a top team. That's just my opinion. I will say, though, Sebastian Vettel is rising very quickly in my overrated list. I'm going to be honest. Underrated. Underrated. In the current grid, I'd say Perez and Albon as well, but probably Perez as the most underrated on the grid. I did say Albon at the moment, but Albon has only had 2 races, but Perez has always been underrated for me. Of all time, it's difficult to say because there's so many drivers out there that could be either overrated or underrated. Most overrated of all time. I don't know who I could go for that. Jacques Villeneuve keeps coming to my mind, so I'll go for him, and also Nelson Piquet. I'll go for those two as my most overrated. Most underrated? I don't know who I'd go for. There's one driver. This is gonna sound so surprising, but Mika Salo, very underrated driver. He would, if there were no team orders for obvious reasons at the time, would have won a race for Ferrari when he replaced Michael Schumacher at Hockenheim in '99. I think Mika Salo's a very underrated, or was an underrated driver. But there's so many. Johnny Herbert was an underrated driver. He was very good. Jean Alesi. Gerhard Berger. Who else? Maybe Kubica when he was at his best. And I think slightly Juan Pablo Montoya at times. I think when people look back, they think of him in a worse way than he actually was. But I don't know who I'd go for absolutely number one most overrated or underrated of all time. Another overrated is Fisichella, Trulli. But yeah, I don't know who I'd go for absolutely number one. That's tough. Anton M asks, could you see Vettel being booted out or leaving Ferrari this season or next? If he keeps what he did up in Bahrain, yes, he will be kicked out. Not at the end of this season, but end of 2020, I think. Right, let me read through comments here. Simon Cragland asks or says, I don't think Vettel will stay in Ferrari after 2020. What do you think? If he keeps, again, this up, he will leave Ferrari at the end of 2020. No doubt about it. Count Blas says Nico Rosberg is overrated. I don't think he was over or underrated. I think he was about what people thought. He performed how people thought he was in terms of his skill level or talent. I don't think he was over or underrated. James Donovan asks, Seb to Alfa or Seb to retire after Ferrari? He wouldn't go to Alfa. I think he'd be likely to either maybe go back to Red Bull if Max Verstappen came the other way to Ferrari, or maybe go to Renault, maybe McLaren if McLaren are a lot more competitive. I don't think it'd be Alfa though. Or, a team like Haas. I don't think he'd go there at all. Sebastian, he asks, how many championships do you think Leclerc will win at Ferrari? I think he will win I'm going to go with 2. I'm going to go with 2 to be safe. He could win even more, we don't know, but I'm going to go 2. I think, say in the near future, I think his chances of a world championship are a lot stronger in 2020 than they are for 2019, because 2020, you know, going into that season, he'll have a year under his belt. He'll be way more confident in that team. And if he keeps up that level of performance like he did in Bahrain, he'll be the number 1 at Ferrari. So I think 2020 is more likely of a year for him to win the drivers. And then maybe, I don't know, sometime between 2021 and 2023 or 2024, he'll win another one. But 2020, I think you need to look out for Charles Leclerc as a definite, real strong contender for the World Championship. He could contend this year if he keeps that up, but 2020, for me, is a lot more likely because, again, he'll be more experienced at the team and in Formula 1, more confident, and if Ferrari can keep improving their car, you never know. He could win the championship next year or even this year. Late Boy asks, did you like Lando Norris's race in Bahrain? Yep, I did. Wishwader, can McLaren win a championship with Renault or should they have stayed with Honda? I think they had a better chance, honestly, with Honda because Honda put a lot of development into their power units, but because McLaren dictated to them how their power unit should be designed, Honda then fell behind in terms of development. So they absolutely blew it. But what they should have done is let Honda build the power unit how they wanted to, and then, as Christian Horner said, for the Red Bull and Honda partnership, we will make it fit. That's what they should have done, McLaren, but they didn't. I think there's less chance of it happening with Renault, but to be honest, I don't think McLaren are winning the Drivers' or Constructors' Championship for at least a decade. I don't see it at all. Are Haas the second slowest midfield team? No, absolutely not. They just had a bad race pace. I think qualifying pace-wise, they are the best in the midfield, but when it comes to the race, they tend to drop back, kind of like Ferrari at times. Ben McCarthy, did you realise this is the first time in Mercedes 2010's history that they've started the season with 2 consecutive 1-2 finishes? I did not know that, and yet that is true. Maybe that's an omen for a dominant season. Who knows? But I'm going to look for one final comment, I think, and then we will, or a couple final comments, and then we'll move on to, or I'll go to the end of this stream. Airbus fan, both Red Bull problems in Bahrain was completely set up fault. Engineers didn't understand the cars this weekend. Do you think it's true? No, I don't think it is, because Max Verstappen basically confirmed during the weekend that they were not getting the tyres to work on that car. And that's not really set up, that's just the car not getting the tyres to work, whether that's tyre temperature or just, stopping it from wearing. So no, it wasn't set up, it was tyres. But I'm going to end on Francisco Bayetta's question. Sorry if I mispronounced your final name there. He asks, who is better, Charles Leclerc or Max Verstappen? Still for me, Max Verstappen. Charles Leclerc could be better than Verstappen, but we need to see how he does in 2019. We can't say after 2 races who is, we can't say after 2 races that Leclerc is better because he's only had 2 races in a comparable car. And by the way, Verstappen was better than him in Australia, even though Ferrari did have their issues. So for me, Max Verstappen is the better driver, but I am willing to be proven wrong. But guys, that has been it for the race review for the 2019 Bahrain Grand Prix. Thank you guys for coming along and being a part of this hour-and-a-half stream reviewing the race that was so good from yesterday. And also, thank you guys so much for 3,000 subscribers. And now, guys, the target is 4,000 at the end of April. Hopefully, we can get to that, and that's the new aim. So hopefully we can get to that pretty soon, before the end of the month. But yep, thank you guys for subscribing. And if you haven't already subscribed, don't forget to, either bottom right of the screen, you can click subscribe right there, or click on my channel name, go to the channel page and subscribe, and hit the notifications bell for more content like this, and race watch-alongs and qualifying watch-alongs and race weekend content in general. Like this video, comment down below what you thought of this video, and also comment down below what did you think of what I had to say on what happened in Bahrain, and what did you think overall of everything that happened in the Bahrain Grand Prix of 2019. As well, don't forget to join our Discord server, link below in the description. That's the best place for notifications for my videos and streams. And also, we have a great growing community over there of almost 150 people, and that is the hardcore Shazza HD F1 community. So if you want to join that, link in the description. It is third from bottom. And also, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Chaz61. We're now a great place to keep up to date with me and what I'm doing, and yeah, just what I'm doing with the channel and what I'm doing within the F1 community. And also, check out my website, chazahd.com, for more content like this. Link below in the description. But guys, until the next recorded video, which is, well, it's tomorrow, there will be a video, and it's going to be that incident analysis part, took out of this stream and then uploaded separately. So, you know, people who haven't seen it can see it and give their thoughts on it without having to go through an hour and a half stream. So that will be uploaded tomorrow. Then after that, we of course have a gap in between the Bahrain Grand Prix finishing, of course, and the Chinese Grand Prix, the 1000th Formula One race in history. So what my plan is I'm going to do the podcast on Saturday for sure at 3 PM UK time live. I've got 2 recorded videos planned. One is about Formula One in 2021, because now we've basically had the rules and the rule book revealed to us as to what the rules for 2021 are going to be. Also, I will be doing a race celebrating the 1000th Formula One race by looking at the best races in history as we build up to race 1000. And my news show will be taking place before the Chinese Grand Prix weekend happens, but it might happen the week of, because I might wait a bit of time to see if more news comes out, so we can actually do a news show and not just report news from the Bahrain Grand Prix. So that's what's coming up on the channel. So video tomorrow, the incident analysis from this stream with the Vettel, Hamilton, Verstappen, Sainz, Stroll, Grosjean, Giovinazzi, Kvyat incidents, and also the next recorded video, Formula One in 2021. The next stream, 3 PM on Saturday, live podcast episode. But guys, until those videos and streams, and until the next race, the 2019 Chinese Grand Prix from Shanghai, where it is the 1000th race in Formula One history, it has been me, Chazza HD. Goodbye.